What secret did your family keep from you until you were an adult? When I was 6, my hamster died while we were on holiday, so my grandparents bought a new one the same color. I only found out about this earlier this year. We all thought you knew, they said. Looking back, I do remember thinking she was smaller than before. My family were worried that I was smart enough to figure out the ruse straight away. But I sure showed them. Edit. Thanks for the gold. Stranger. My dad died from leukemia when I was 28. I didn't know he had it until 5 or 6 months before he died. Around Halloween or so. My mom mentioned that dad had radiation burns on his neck. Dad was a radiation oncologist. But I was confused as to why he'd be so close to get burned. When I asked why he was so close, Mom just stared at me until she realized I hadn't been told. He's been diagnosed with it since I was little. Edit. I'll answer a bunch of questions when I get to a computer. I'm afraid all this'll melt my phone. Other edit. Dad was a radiation oncologist. Not a radiologist. Can't believe I did that. My parents are both gay. The main purpose of their marriage and life together in general was to keep that secret. Throughout the years, they saw other people. My mom's baking buddy? Yeah. She didn't just come over to bake things. My dad's friend that always helped around the house with home improvement projects and vice versa? Yep. I had no idea. Not a clue. Didn't find out until I came home for college break one year a few days early unannounced. My father had married before he married my mother. I was quite shocked. I thought my mom was his first wife. I found a wedding photograph of him with his first wife and asked him. Luckily he was quite upfront about it. He said his first wife died of breast cancer. I wish to get to know her though. Beautiful lady. You just made me think about my nephews. My brother's wife had been married for 4 months previously, divorced. But they are not open about it. In large part due to being quite religious. It makes me wonder if their children know. Yours is a good attitude. My dad's mother tried to kill my mom with a knife right after my parents got married because she didn't want anyone taking her baby away. She was yelling that if she can't have her son then no one can. Then when she couldn't stab my mother, she tried to kill my father instead. That the reason I lived with my stepmom and stepdad is because my stepdad is actually my transgender biological mom. I finally got the courage up to ask about my situation. So they told me. They figured I'd ask when I was ready. Full stop. That this entire damn family is run rampant with mental problems. I wish I was joking. My brother and I have crazy funneled to us from every angle. Mental problems don't run in my family. No. It slows down and gets to know each of us personally. Not mine, but one of my friend's friend was at a family gathering when she was like 17. She tried out her uncle's special cake. She asked how it was made. The uncle replied, "Oh. That's a family secret." That's when she found out she was adopted. That my father's parents had 7 children back in the 1920s to 1940s and were never legally married. Also that my father's father was wanted for murder in Norway. He became a merchant marine and sailed to NY and changed his last name as a result. My mother committed suicide when I was in 7th grade. I was told she had OD'd on some illegal drug. It wasn't until my freshman year in college, 6 years later, that I was told she actually hung herself. I had mixed feelings. But I was very angry. That my mom, while pregnant with me, considered adoption long enough that she mentioned there was a family in TX that wanted me. She was 18 at the time. Her older sister talked her into keeping me, saying you know you can never change your mind and get her back. Ironically, my mom ended up marrying, and 26 years later is still married to my stepdad who sexually abused me as a child. Yet completely denies it. I genuinely wish she had just given me away. So, there's my secret along with it. Edit. Thanks for letting me get this out and for reminding me how awful it was. I had to sugarcoat it for so long that I feel validated by your supportive comments. And I'm so sorry to all of you with similar past hurts. Just break the cycle. Y'all. I have two, but I learned them the same night. So my dad's side, who I don't like very much because they are a shat, lied to me for years. I had two uncles die. One when I was in 2nd grade. I was told he died in a motorcycle accident, when in fact he was gay and was prostituting himself to get drugs. He ended up with AIDS and died. He was in his early to mid 20s. Now for the younger brother. This to me is more ducked up. So this uncle died when he was like 8 years old. I was told was that some kid in school put rat poison in his coke and he drank it and died. When in fact they were having a family party and someone had put rat poison in a resealable coke bottle. Put it in the fridge for some unlucky person to get. Well, the kids were forbidden to drink soda. He and a few of his other siblings, including my dad, took this particular bottle. Well, the other two were too scared to get caught, so they didn't drink it. Well, my uncle indeed did. Then died from it. I found all this out at my sister's high school graduation about 9 years ago. My dad met my mom in a strip club. Grandmother attempted to kill her husband's mistress with a knife. Only managed to cut her face and hand. Grandmother was sent to court gore charges, but the judge felt that my grandmother was not at fault as the mistress should not have slept with this married man. By the way, this is in Colombia. My grandmother attempted to run over my grandpa's secretary. I later learned that grandmother had stepped out on him while he served as a medic in the Japanese theater of WWII. All turned out well in the end. Grandmother got over it and grandpa married his secretary. Moved to the West Coast and the two stayed together until his death 30 years later. One of the 4 children of my great-great-grandmother was a baby left in a basket on the porch. She never revealed. So one branch does not belong on this family tree. But we can't figure it out. That's awesome, she never said who. Family is family. She loved the orphan like her own blood. My dad killed my hamster by putting it in a garbage bag and hooking it up to his tailpipe. My hamster Freddy was apparently very ill. The only vet near us, rural Delaware, did not work with small animals and would not euthanize him. My dad, doing what he thought was best, held him as humanely as possible. Then put him back in cage so I could find him. Dad even helped me make a little coffin out of a show box to bury Freddy in. 30 years later he cried when he told me. My big brother never told anyone in the family, for obvious reasons, that he smoked weed from time to time, like once twice a month, but he told me yesterday. I was happily surprised. Now we can smoke together. My dad was a liar. About everything. His age. His job in the past. How many times he was married. If I had half brothers or sisters. Spoiler. I definitely do, and I have yet to find out just how many. He was married a lot. About every little detail. The first time I'd seen my sister in 3 years. She decided to drunkenly drop that gum on me. So everything I'd remembered about him. Every little detail I clung to after his death 12 years ago. Everything said at his funeral or around the dinner table about him wasn't true. Fuck, was that a bunch to the tit? Oh, that explains all the comments. Punch, not bunch. My bad. I'm leaving it though cause it's funny. When I was a teenager I found pictures of my mom in an army uniform. Never knew she enlisted. And if you knew her you would be shocked. I asked her about it and she told me she just did boot camp and it wasn't for her. But she enlisted for college money. There are 9 kids in her family. I dropped it. A few years later. MT older sister told me a little more. One night while out to dinner with my dad she was saying how she doesn't like one of the aunts. He told her there is more to her than she knew. Apparently my mom was raped by a superior and got pregnant. Her very religious parents kicked her out and disowned her. And my aunt took her in. She gave the baby up for adoption. I'm pretty sure she has no idea we know. She is a very private person in concerns to her past. But it's weird to think I have a half brother out there. My dad offered to help her reunite with him. She declined. He would have probably been born late 70s. Very early 80s, as this happened before she met my dad in 82. She was worried he would want nothing to do with her once he saw the stretch marks and knew her story. They were married within 5 months of knowing each other. Going on 34 years now. My aunt was great and became pregnant as a result. This was pre-Roe v. Wade, and my grandfather helped send her to New York for a safe and legal abortion. Good guy grandfather. That my mom is gay. Mom and dad stayed together to raise my sister and I. Now. Close with both, and mom and dad are still best friends. Super confusing at first, but now it's just the way it happened. My mom was confused as well. After having my sis and I, she vowed to raise us with my dad in the pic. I commend her for doing what she felt was right. Everyone involved is happy and successful. Edit. They went separate ways when I, the youngest, was out on my own. 18. I wasn't an adult, but I was in my early teens when I found out that I have a half brother that's 20 years older than me and lives in Germany. I'm Canadian. And he came and lived with us for like 2 years. That was weird. I had a half brother in the UK. I'm a Yank. He was my mother's son from an illicit affair with one of her father's friends. Was giving a sales presentation in my early 20s to a group, and afterwards was approached by one of the participants. Turned out she had had multiple affairs with my dad, spanning over 2 of his marriages. She had moved to our town to continue the relationship, but he broke it off. At the time I had no idea and what impact she had on my family over the years. Needless to say, when I called my dad and dropped her name, it made for an awkward conversation. Edit. For those asking to finish the story, there isn't much to add. My dad admitted he had an affair with her and told me when and where. But at that point he was separated from my birth mom and stepmom. Yes. The lady was a bit off her rocker, but clearly needed to get it off her chest. For my family it wasn't all that mind-blowing, as we have had our share of challenges. I thought a little less of him for a while, but we all moved on and lived happily ever after. The end. When I was a kid, my mother made a dish called cheesy mashed potatoes. It was basically mashed potatoes but orange because she mixed in cheddar cheese. Or so I thought. I was in my mid-20s at a family gathering when my mom was talking to my aunt and said, well, to get the kids to eat more vegetables, I would mash carrots with the potatoes. I told them it was orange from the cheese. They loved it. My mind was utterly blown. Utterly. And completely blown. Cheesy mashed potatoes was the highlight of my week as a child. And it was all a lie. That my mother's father had a whole secret second family, and when she was little, he cheated on his second wife with another lady. She got pregnant, had a little boy, and he brought that little boy to be raised by his first wife and family. I found out a couple of years ago. About 5 years after his death. Why my parents got divorced. It turns out he has severe issues with depression, which are somehow genetically linked. Details are fuzzy. No one really wants to explain anything to me. He apparently threatened to kill himself, my mom, and me one night, and spent plenty of time in and out of asylums. My parents divorced when I was 6 and I honestly don't remember a thing. I found out when I was 17 after spending an extended period of time with my dad for the first time in my life. He kept hinting at the issue for 2 weeks, begging me to be aware of periods of extended sadness. When I got home to my mom's, I waited for her to get drunk one night and got it out of her. It turns out, because the depression is a matter of genes, my parents thought it best to not tell me while I was a teenager. That way I wouldn't blame my angst and problems on something I may or may not have, and thus make it a self-fulfilling prophecy. Yeah. That my mom was in an arranged marriage, which was abusive. Had 2 kids with that original husband. Left. And headed east. Met my dad. Had me. And that was that. Waited until I was 18. And she had been dead for 12 years. Before they told me. I don't know if 16 is considered an adult. But oh well. When I was 16 I was going through my brother's porn videos and I came across one called Macho Meat Man. I thought it was weird, but ignored it because he had like 20 straight porn videos. A couple days later it popped into my head again, and the thought of how out of place it was kept nagging at me. So I went and asked my mom, what would you do if one of your kids was gay? And she responded, you're not gay too, are you? Turns out my brother had come out to everyone the year prior but didn't want to tell me because I was going to a Christian school at the time and he thought I wouldn't accept him. We're still really close, and never for a second did doing anything other than accept him for who he was cross my mind. My dad apparently had been some sort of drug lord and my mom had been helping him. I found out when he went crazy and they had a huge fight in my house. He went missing and they just found him dead a few months ago. Still haven't gotten over it. Meth hills. That I was adopted. Found out when I was 17 and my mom had finally decided to leave my abusive dad. He threatened to reveal it in divorce court. So she took me for a drive and told me. My first reaction, thank God I'm not related to that son of a rick. She was so scared I would be mad at her. But he had forbidden her to ever tell me throughout their marriage. Not her fault. She is still my mom and always will be. My dad was in jail for a few years. I'm not sure exactly when, but I was around ages 2-4. This I already knew. What I didn't know was that during this time my mom divorced my dad and they remarried when he got out. One year for Christmas my brothers and I got a brand new NES. What we didn't know, until recently, is that it wasn't brand new at all. My parents had been playing it for months after putting us to bed. I like imagining them up late, laughing and having fun, and then giving it to us for Christmas and watching us own all the parts they got stuck at.